This is Dr. Rosie Kuhn, and this podcast series is called Spiritual Immersion, Taking the Plunge. And the intention of this series of podcasts is to support and empower you to cultivate a relationship with your spirit self. Now, many of us think of ourselves as human beings having a spiritual experience, and then there's those of us that know ourselves to be spiritual beings having a human experience. And whatever the truth in that is, there's this need, from my perspective, to integrate that spiritual reality with our human reality. We have human circumstances, we have spiritual circumstances, we have human consensus view of reality principles, and we have spiritual principles. And part of this spiritual immersion process is a very unique individual path or journey or adventure into self-discovery that each one of us is doing for ourselves. And my job is not to tell you how to do it or what to do or what to believe or what are your principles, but my job is to encourage you to question your reality, question the truth of consensus view of reality, question what is your way of being in the world. So that's the intention of all these podcasts. So today I want to focus on the need to cultivate and strengthen and express courage, and the courage to take leaps of faith. Now, we think of leaps of faith as being huge, dynamic decisions to give up something for something else, perhaps. When in fact, it takes an incredible amount of faith just to shift a thought in the moment, to shift a thought from something perhaps that is fear-based to something that is, I call essence-based or love-based or beauty-based or creative. And just to say, okay, I'm feeling afraid and this is the thought. And to say, okay, I'm going to shift that thought. That can be really a scary leap of faith to say, okay, I know that, and I've heard from many teachers and spiritual books and research that fear actually doesn't exist in the sense of we create so much of it from the past. Our fear-based thinking is based on the past. And if we're in this moment looking forward, we have nothing to be afraid of because we have no idea what's coming from the future to us. And so in a sense, we have nothing to be afraid of. And especially if your spiritual principle says, hey, it's all good. The universe is kind and caring and loving, and it's always forthcoming with prosperity to the degree that I am able to receive it, then our job is to learn how to receive that, as opposed to saying, well, it's scary and I'm afraid to believe that. I'm afraid to trust. I feel vulnerable when I'm in that sense of asking for what I want. And asking for what I want and not being sure of what's going to come my way. The practice is not to anticipate the results, but to be in the practice of shifting, the practice of that leap of faith from a thought of fear, I'm not going to get it, or a thought of nothing's going to come my way, or life is going to be hard, whatever those thoughts are that are fear-based. And just for this moment, deciding, okay, I'm gonna practice having a not fear thought. What could that be? And that could mean just landing your eyes instead of having your eyes, in a sense, your vision, thinking about the thought and creating from that thought, oh, here's the vision of that looking sad, bad, disappointing, to saying, okay, I'm not going to think about that. I can choose to stop the fear thought. And that, in a sense, takes faith. What's going to show up if I stop thinking the fear thought? And we don't know. Most of us don't know because we're so immersed in fear, in a fear-based reality, that we don't even know what it's like to think outside that dome of fear. So the first element of this process is to begin to go, oh, I can train myself. Yoda says, you'll hear me say this 100 times, Yoda says, train yourself to let go of what you are afraid to lose. Now, most people think that's a big leap of faith. But in this moment, it's just a thought. Wow, in this moment, I'm afraid my dog's going to bark. So I can focus on that. Is she going to bark? Is she going to bark? Is she going to bark? Or I can just let go of it and be more present to you in this moment and my intention of speaking with you and to you and engage with you. So it's up to me to make that choice. And it's up to you, each one of us, each one of you, to be at choice as well about what is it that how can I do that differently? So one practice would be, if you've got things that are lovely or pretty or things that remind you of good memories of people, you can focus on those kinds of things as opposed to on the fear. In the book Oneness, which you'll hear me talk about 100 times as well, it says we are here to completely reject consensus view of reality. Now, we don't have to do that all at once. We don't have to do that in 6 months or 3 months, or we don't have to do it at all. But for me, it was a really fascinating reality that to live in the spiritual dimensions, or to include and integrate more of the spiritual dimensions and principles and values of most spiritual traditions, I have to question what views of consensus reality don't work for me. What doesn't work for me, and which principles, in a spiritual principles, which ones of those do I want to begin to embrace? That doesn't mean I have to change anything other than to begin to question, what are my thoughts? And how often do I think in relation to consensus reality and fear? And how often do I allow myself thoughts of love and appreciation and gratitude and expansion, and it's all good, and I'm here to learn, those kinds of things, as opposed to I'm here to get, or I'm here to take, I'm here to, what are those elements for you? And each one of us has our own sense of that view of consensus reality, and we have an opportunity to question. And even though taking the plunge sounds really huge in terms of spiritual immersion process, that taking the plunge is in this current moment, this present moment, I get to be in the state of choice to say I can be in a fear, state of fear, and feel that in my body, or I can choose perhaps to want to choose something different. I want to choose something different. Don't know what that is. But the outcome is I'd like peace, or I'd like serenity, or I'd like a state of grace, or I'd like a sense of receiving or sense of connection. All of those are, in a sense, separate from that fear state. And so we begin to cultivate awareness. We become more conscious, I want to say mindful of that practice of saying, here's a thought, and I can change that thought if I want to. And that can be really scary to say, I'm going to change that thought. I want to change that thought. And all we have to do is do the leap of faith, which is, okay, in this moment, I'm thinking this. In this moment, I'm going to look at that flower, or I'm going to bring up an image of my grandson, and light comes into my life and smile comes onto my face. That's just a choice. That's a leap of faith in that way. So that's a big, huge practice, because we're starting in every day. I mean, I'm skipping back. It's like every moment of every day, we are in a state of choice. We don't realize that, but we really are. We're in a state of choice always to have the thinking that we want and have the perspective. And part of this for me, what I want to make clear too, is that for me, the experience, it's like being a scientist, a researcher. And to experiment, what would it be like to shift that thought? What would it be like to make this phone call? What would it be like to write this? What would it be like to paint that? What would it be like to go out and play with the dog? What would it be like? And each of those is an experiment to say, I'm doing something different than I would normally do it. And that's an investigation. Who am I that can make that choice? Who am I that can choose differently? Wow. I mean, that's empowerment, self-empowerment. And again, in the sense of consensus reality, we're afraid of that place of saying, who am I and what would my life be like if I made these choices? If I became 100% responsible for how my life is showing up? And that's what this is all about. That spiritual immersion process is taking responsibility for our whole being, our well-being, and being willing to investigate and experiment one moment at a time to see what would show up if I just shift this as a matter of a leap of faith. All right. Well, Gracie has barked, so that's, I'm going to say that's the end of this particular session of Spiritual Immersion, Taking the Plunge. If you'd like more information, I've got blogs, videos, and books on my website, theparadigmshifts.com. You can reach me at rosie@theparadigmshifts.com. And I have lots of books, Self-Empowerment 101, Cultivating Spirituality in Children, You Know Your Life is Transforming When, all kinds of different books that are all related to this process of listening and hearing who you are in this process of being human and being a spiritual being at the same time. All right, big hugs, blessings, and I'll talk to you soon. Okay, bye-bye.